Good morning. This topic is a little bit hard to talk about. We're living in a time where it seems that we can't speak on certain things, and this is one of those certain things that is especially, say, socially dangerous to speak about. Identity versus racism, right? Well, what is the difference? Like it is healthy to have pride for your culture or or heritage or traditions and stuff like that, and that's totally a healthy thing, right? And there is a spot where if we are start to change how we look at pride and how we look at let's say such a heavy pride that you put yourself or other people up on a pedestal or down underground, one or the other, right? And it doesn't matter. Like people talk about like anti-racism and racism. Well, to be honest, if you are separating somebody out because of their race, it doesn't matter how you're dividing them, but if you are casting a net over top of them and you don't even know, that is racism straight up. It doesn't matter if it's saying that it's a positive thing or a negative thing. If you're saying one group is better or lesser, then it is racism. So I wrote something a while back because I like having these conversations, but I know how hard it is to have them. So I'll read you something that I wrote quite a while ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It is often healthy to identify ourselves or others by our culture or group. However, there are times when we should not. In a serious context, we should not identify with our culture if the intent of the identification is to put ourselves or others higher or lower unless there are obvious physiological reasons to do so. For example, black men are generally taller than Asian men, or girls generally have higher pitched voice than boys. It's kind to say, I love blank culture. I love blank music. It's not kind to say blank culture or blank music um, is the best music. Whether we say this group is oppressed or this group is the oppressor, whether we say this group should be treated better or this group should be treated worse, we should know that no group or race is singular in their nature. Every single human being in themselves are complex multidimensional paintings, painted by their experience. Don't shake the table while we are painting. So what I'm saying there is that the more we talk about racism and we start separating groups, and it is endemic. It's just we have a pandemic of dividing people going on. Even people that are saying they're unifying are dividing each other. I went to a healing set. Well, I guess it was, to be honest, it was very much like a church get together, but with music, and I really liked it. I got to play some drum, and it was really great. Like I did feel a little uncomfortable for certain reasons, and that can be, like I said, that's my own uncomfortable thing about it, because first of all, it was felt very churchy, like a kind of and I'm more Rasta, and I I I think we should all be talking, we should all be sharing our knowledge, and when we have one person that's kind of like doing the up on the stage thing, and that's fine. We have people that have competence, but we should also have more talking amongst the group. It was a small group, and they were all very intelligent people. And the person running it, she had lovely voice, lovely everything, had beautiful knowledge to share. She didn't really like let anybody else speak unless you pushed yourself in to speak, and that felt really like that church feeling. So I did feel a little uncomfortable with that, and like all the speaking and the singing, was most of it wasn't in I couldn't even understand it, so I felt I couldn't really sing along as much as I wanted to, but also I didn't really understand it, so there was a few things that made me uncomfortable about it, but that's my own subjective thing. I'm not pathologizing that circle, because everyone there was having an amazing time, including myself playing music. However, this really intelligent and spiritual person kept on throwing out race and identity inside her talking, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I was like, well, and there's all of this happening where we're just dividing people, and especially like it seems like really spiritual people are doing it, are dividing people, and especially like around the natives, and when if we want things to start to, if we want to paint each other with the same brush, then stop painting people with a different brush. If you're telling a story, you don't need to tell the sex or the race or the sexual identity or any of these things. Like that's, as soon as you're doing that, you're trying to get somebody to listen differently, right? Shouldn't we all listen at the same way? Like if we want equality, then we should be based on our what our qualities are, right? Not the book's cover, but the content, right? And I want to say, like, we have to be very careful with this identity politics stuff, because if you look at what happened not so long, it happens all the time, but if we look to what's happening in South Africa and in other countries in Africa, I'm just thinking one country's escaping my mind at the moment, but they did this thing where they took all the land back from the farmers, right? And gave it back to the African people of the land. But they have to understand is that there's white people have lived in South Africa and around that shores for 6 or 7 generations that they know of, right? So, and just because we want to make things right, we're going to oppress another culture, right? So we do need to figure out this reconciliation thing. Absolutely. Like there's some things that are, I am sickened by the communist system that these reserves are based upon. Because that is communism, okay? They build them a house and they give them just enough to survive. And they're trying to do that to all of us, okay? And they have been doing it to most of us through their cartelism, but that it seems like capitalism, but it's just a mix between communism and cartelism, right? So we have to be very careful with these representations, and it came up the other day too, and a woman was telling me, I was telling her about our products and how she was having anxiety problems, and I was telling her, well, she's taking a 2-to-1 gummies. And I was like, yeah, well, that's good and stuff like that. Just be careful on your source of what you're getting things, because people, if they're just buying whatever they can to make things happen, then you have to be very, very careful. She shows me the pack, and it says Charlotte's Web on the top, right? That's not Charlotte's Web. I'm telling you straight up. Charlotte's Web, that was like the company. Charlotte was the little girl that had epilepsy that was saved by this 20-to-1 CBD strain that's very special from Colorado. So this people out in the valley claiming to be hippies are stealing the virtue of another company, but it's not even the same product, you know? That's like shifty stuff, and these are hippies selling these things, right? It helped her. She was fine. Does help her with her anxiety because it was 2-to-1 CBD, which is nice, right? So I'm like, good, that works for you. But I told her, if you want to, if you're having anxiety, you might want to avoid the THC altogether, and you can come talk to me about the 20-to-1. She's like, well, no, I got these people that make it, and they're just hippies, and they're ladies, right? They're ladies. She said that twice, and I was like, why does it matter that they're ladies? And she's like, oh, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? See, it's like she knew too that she was playing identity politics. She didn't know when she first said it. It was like it was subconscious for her to put women as, let's say, more responsible than men, right? And in certain situations, we could probably say that is true in 60% of the time. Vice versa for both sides, you know? However, I had to call her out on that right then. It's like, first of all, they stole somebody's name, which is trying to steal a destiny, and also trying to steal the idea of equality. So that's, to me, is that's not good. Second of all, that the fact that because they're ladies, it's all good. See, this is that identity politics. Like, this is the new Marxism, right? We can't use the same Marxism or else everybody will be like, oh, this happened before, but we can just play with it a little bit, right? So we have to remember, like, here's another thing I wrote, and it's more like I write these things as experiments, like, because I always wonder how to get involved. Like, they'll have, for example, all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. First of all lives matter is the unifying force between all races and everything together. So that right off the bat, we know all lives matter still means Black Lives Matters too, and and vice versa. But there is reasons that people are yelling, "What about the Black lives?" Well, go look down in the states and look at some of how um, certain groups like the black people that have the warrior archetype still in them, and they know how evil the system they are around them, so they are actually treated differently, and that is to do with culture, but it also is to do with the fact that they want to kill all the warriors, right? And that's why they wanted to breed away get rid of the natives, and that's why they wanted to be harder on black people, because they do generally have I believe, and this is again, I am going on to the race side of things, but I believe that certain cultures, not bloodlines, so not race, certain cultures have warriors in them, and those threaten the uh, the Dark Father or the government, right? The Dark Mother and the Father with communism, right? So those people get attacked. Okay, it's about culture, but the unfortunate thing about blood lineage and cultural lineage is they seem to go in line with each other. It's like families don't let certain knowledge out to other families, right? But that's the pathological side of this. It starts to become eugenic when you start to put more um, love behind blood lineage over cultural lineage. And if we were trying to make a better world, then we would all want to share our lineage with each other, right? And I'm not talking blood lineage, I'm talking cultural lineage. And there's anybody that pathologizes another culture because you are on your culture. It's like the elephant story. There's the four monks touching different parts of the elephant. One's on the leg, and he's like, "Oh, the elephant is like a tree." One's up on the ear. He's like, "Oh, the elephant's like a sail or something," right? And the other one's out on the side. He's like, "Oh, the elephant's like a wall," and the other one's touching the tail. No, it's like a rope. He's on the tail, right? But then there's a fifth monk, and he hasn't even touched him at all, and he's like, "Well, you guys have only touched certain parts of it, right? You haven't touched everything. So how would you know what the full elephant is, right? So before you pathologize a certain culture because you don't understand it, because you've never touched that part of the elephant, go touch the part of the elephant first, and then you can start to make some judgments, right? Cool. So like Islam, people pathologize Islam, but if you understood esoteric psychology and you understand that they're from the Abrahamic religions, but the Judaism and Christianity went down some dark roads, and so did Islam. But Islam saw what was going on with these two forces, and they became like warriors against that, right? And so the darker side of Islam is that they're like, oh, they want to destroy this control system that they're hiding religion or using religion to control people for, right? And Islam has that too. I'm not saying that the Sharia law and all this dark sides, and that's the Dark Father controlling people through Islam also. However, if you understood esoteric teachings, you would know that like I was talking about Dionysus, and he tears people apart and puts them back together like a vicious warrior. If you understood psychology and that speaking through symbolism and metaphors instead of actuality, then you wouldn't just pathologize things. Then maybe you'd open your mind and feel a different side of the elephant, right? So remember, we all come from you know different teachings in the world. Like we can learn about Buddhism, we can learn about all the Abrahamic religions, which are all based on like the older things like the Sumerian text and the Egyptians, and some even believe that the Egyptian stories are actually the same stories in the Bible. They just had to change the cultural story so it fit our world, you know? And it's we can if we want to stay resentful and let's say bitter and racist and divisive, we could call that stolen history or stolen knowledge, right? And then we'd be mad and try to steal it back, right? And then that goes on forever. But instead, we can say that was knowledge passed down and edited so that we could understand it for each culture. It allows us to be less resentful and dark. We should use our darkness for the good, not for the evil. So next time you're telling a story and you feel like chucking out something about a person's identity just to add some flavor, I would suggest not to do so. You know, if you're telling a story and you don't tell the identity of the person, and somebody's like, "Oh, blah blah blah, you can't do that," and they're like, you know what I mean? That means that story is truly been voted on from that person with no identity attached, right? But if you attach identity to try to get away with saying something, or to say that this person can get away with it because of their identity, or can't get away with it because of their identity, then you're trying to color the story to change things, right? When I was doing a lot of research on history and theology and mythology and all these things, I found myself on lots of different channels on YouTube. And one channel, I saw so much truth in it, but then I started to notice like this. He was like, "Oh, they're color coding history and stuff like that," and they talked about how like this was the actual culture that did this and not this, right? And I saw him color coding things because I saw different stories of the same thing, and other parts of the stories shone way more true than what he was saying. So I wrote him a message. I'm like, "We have color coded on both sides of things, okay?" All sides of things we've color coded. And this is that blood lineage or that pride towards blood lineage over cultural lineage, right? So, is a lot of people get angry like I'm not a lot of people. Let's just say very little amount of racist Christian people don't like when I talk about Haile Selassie as in bloodlines with David. Why the fuck not? Well, I believe Solomon, which is in lineage, had 700 wives. Okay, let's do the mathematical equation and see how many of us are lineage with these great people, right? And they are living in golden age time, which means a time of unity. And when Sheba came over, that's when the races mixed, right? And that's where Haile Selassie's bloodline came through, and he was the conquering lion of our last 100 years, you know. So there's conquering lions in every culture. You can be a conquering lion in a single situation. Every time you decide to take on an ideology you think is pathological and you know that it's going to be harder to take it on than it is to just be like, oh, live and let live, Buddha. Which you need to do that sometimes too. But that when you do take on the hero's journey in a singular situation, you just got some valor for that. So that's the situational conquering lion, right? So, you know, it's a funny joke we could do. Like I'm not like serious about it, but let's just like imagine like yeah, I'm not even gonna do it because it's just kind of silly. But if we wanted to like really have equality of outcome, okay, we would have to have uh, one from one race. We would have so every single race, okay, which is like okay, well, like there's so many races and so many different things. Like we people believe that the natives are not from India, but history does point at them from that area and around India. So it's like which races are which are natives. You know what I mean? So like we don't even know where any of us are come from. So that's right off the bat. It's so convoluted. It's ridiculous. But then if that's right, we could finally say there was 12 different races we could come up with. All right. Well, then we have to have a man and a woman for each one. We have to have a gay man and a gay woman for each one. We have to have um, a fat man and a fat woman from each one. We have to have a skinny woman. I can go on forever like this if we want equality of outcome, right? I am all about equality of opportunity. And this is why I'm making these videos is I want people to see that we're not living in a world where you as hard as you work and as real as you are, you get the karma that you deserve. Well, no. You I've seen from my experience that when you speak your truth and you're not licking everybody's butthole, and kissing everyone's ass, you have to work extra hard to survive because people are nepotistic and they like everybody to make them feel great, okay? Well, be very careful with those people. As soon as things get hard, they're either going to attack you or run away from you. There's three types of people: fighters, runners, and befrienders. The ones that just like pretend everything's okay. Most people are these, and that's pathetic weasel stuff, okay? There's time to run, there's time to fight, and you know what? If in very small situations there's time to befriend and be sociopathic, okay? And that's usually like, here's an example. If a man is very huge and there's a little woman and she has no chance to get away, she would choose to befriend rather than try to run or fight, because she's not going to win the fight and there's no way to run. So there's the choice of the third choice. So there's a situational morality to that choice, right? Choose truth. And please stop shaking the table while we're painting, okay? Just look at what we're painting and decide how beautiful we are from that rather than from this. Much love.